It looks like Star Wars Mania is back in full force, no pun intended, so let's talk about all the great contributions Star Wars has made to gaming. Hey guys, I'm Jake Baldino for gameranx.com. Now, as a huge Star Wars fan who's played probably a lot of the Star Wars games, this is a topic I've been dying to talk about. Now, instead of naming every single Star Wars game or making a best of list, I figured we'd talk about the most important Star Wars games that contributed to the gaming media. You know, the big Star Wars games that really changed things. Fun fact, the very first Star Wars game was actually an unlicensed Star Wars game based around a X-Wing pilot for the Apple II computer. After that, in 1982, the Atari 2600 got a ton of Star Wars games like The Empire Strikes Back, Death Star Battle, and Jedi Arena. In 1991, we saw the first Star Wars games being released for Nintendo and Sega Master System and the Game Boy, and then in 1983 we saw Super Star Wars. These were the crazy over-the-top kind of ridiculous platformers based on the original movies that came out for the Super Nintendo system. LucasArts by now had been established in 1982, but now they kind of were getting their hands in their own creative properties. Also around in this timeline we saw the 1992 game X-Wing, which is very important, but we'll get back to that later. The early 90s were very important for Star Wars games because this is when we first saw the fill-in-the-blank games. These are the games that ultimately expanded the universe and read between the lines in between the movies, and this is really important for other movies because nowadays everything likes to build and establish universes through books and prequels and side stories and video games and apps and spin-offs, so Star Wars kind of really started doing that very early. 1995 Star Wars Dark Forces was really their first attempt at that, and it was a little bit of a Doom clone with a really cool Star Wars story. It actually improved upon the Doom formula quite a bit and expanded the universe by taking place after Star Wars A New Hope and introducing us to cool new characters, including the awesome Kyle Katarn. Kyle Katarn also ended up being the star of the sequel and successors to the Dark Forces series, Jedi Knight 1 and 2. These games were awesome because they were the first games where you could really run around with a lightsaber in fully 3D and hack shit up, and it was glorious. That made those games really important, the fact that it was a first-person, third-person hybrid where you could use a blaster and you could use a lightsaber. We hadn't seen anything like that until this time. Now let's backtrack a little bit. In 1992, we had the X-Wing game, and then we had the TIE Fighter game later on, and these were really awesome and really important space sims. These were big, exciting, action-packed, kind of story-based space sims that we hadn't really seen too many at this time, and it was really when they started to rise in popularity. And if you think about it, Star Wars kind of did it really right, and they did it really early on. By the way, X-Wing and TIE Fighter remastered, you can get them on goodoldgames.com. It's really awesome. You should check it out. It's a history lesson for sure, but they're fun. Now, what is so awesome and so important about the X-Wing and TIE Fighter games, other than being revolutionary space sims, was the fact that they also paved the way for Rogue Squadron and Rebel Assault games, which were so freaking awesome. Then there's the Knights of the Old Republic games, the first of which brought BioWare to prominence as an RPG developer. The release of Knights of the Old Republic was incredible and huge, and it really proved BioWare to be the big shit tough guys. The people who made really awesome RPGs where you could make decisions that changed your outcome and changed who you were. And if you think about it, without Knights of the Old Republic, we would never see Mass Effect, we would never see Dragon Age, and we'd never see all these other studios try and do similar things. Then, of course, there's also Star Wars The Old Republic. That was the first MMORPG to have a proper narrative with actual meaningful dialogue options in it. It was one of the first MMORPGs to have a semi-dynamic story that actually kind of maybe mattered a little bit. And honestly, sure, maybe not that many people play The Old Republic anymore, but how many MMORPGs can you say actually had dialogue choices and story aspects that changed that actually mattered to what you were playing? Of course, the saga kind of concludes with Star Wars The Force Unleashed, which was LucasArts' big AAA action Star Wars game. Soon after that, unfortunately, they closed their doors. Wah, wah. But I think it's important to look back at Star Wars and look at the amount of games there are, and the fact that it's just crazy that there's different subgenres of different Star Wars games that all mean very different things, and have all done very different things. You have the action games, the flight simulator games, the fighting games. Screw you, I like Masters of Terraskazi. You had the crappy movie tie-ins, you had the awesome alternate universe expanding games. You also had the incredibly important Battlefield games, which took Star Wars and turned it into an awesome multiplayer military shooter. I think Star Wars really proved to video games and creative universe mediums in general that you can do so much with what you have. You can take an awesome universe and grow it into so much more and make them into fun video games and expand the universe and have fun while doing it. Of course, now, thanks to Disney and J.J. Abrams, none of these Star Wars games really matter, but they matter in my heart, and that's what's important. Guys, this is so much fun talking about Star Wars games. It's one of my favorite things to do, so give this video a like, maybe, please, for me. Help me out. And maybe if you're new, subscribe to the channel, because yeah, sometimes I talk about Star Wars, but I also talk about video games all the time, and we give away free shit, and that's awesome. But whether you guys are new to this channel or not, thank you so much for watching. We love you, and we'll see you next time.